It's the 1960s. NATO, seeing no end to the Cold War, puts out tenders for experimental weapons contracts that could give them the edge on World War III. The German military-industrial complex, not wanting to lose skilled designers, decides to put their hat in the ring. Using their experience from 2 world wars, German weapons engineers had accumulated enough concepts to put out a well-rounded prototype for a future soldier rifle. They named the G11. The Heckler Koch Gewehr 11 is a military rifle prototype firing caseless 4.7mm projectiles. Developed by H&K in conjunction with the aforementioned other military industry leaders across Germany, the conglomerate would christen itself Gesellschaft für Hülsenlose Gewehrsysteme, or literally translated, the Society for Sleeveless Rifle Systems. Up until the 1990s, many improvements were made to the prototype, hoping to make an all-in-one weapon for the frontline troop. A 40mm underslung grenade launcher was added along with a red dot optic built into the faux carry handle. This all-in-one package was shown off to NATO allies, making appearances in multiple major nation future soldier trials, the most important of which was the US Advanced Combat Rifle Trial. Heckler & Koch decided to enter the G11 into the USA's ACR test, against entries from AAI, Steyr, and Colt. Here's the trial's criteria. The rifle needed more soldier-friendly ergonomics. It had to be light. The American main battle rifle at the time was the M16A2, which weighed about 4 kilograms or 8 pounds. These rifles had to be as light or lighter. They had to be modular. Eugene Stoner's 63 prototype was this concept. Either the US wanted it more fleshed out, or it was becoming more realistic with the advent of polymers. They had to lower the felt recoil of shots, and by proxy, double the hit probability compared to the M16A2. And they had to fix the issue of ammunition, both the cost of production and overall size. That last point was where the G11 seemed to shine. It fired a 4.7mm cartridge that was encased in its own propellant. No more brass being left around during shooting, or having to pay for all those expensive cases. This small package would fit in a magazine above the barrel and then rotate the cartridge into the breech, predating FN's similar P90 system by roughly 15 years. But the benefits don't stop at space and weight savings. There is no need for an extraction system, so bolts, breeches, and trunnions can stay enclosed away from the elements. Theoretically, this makes the rifle more weatherproof and reliable. Theoretically. Let's not forget about the RDS optic setup and the ability to fire underslung 40mm grenades. It was a full package, the exemplary rifle of the competition. And it's why we still talk about the G11 today, and not the offerings from AAI, Steyr, and Colt. But it wasn't adopted, and it would stay just as a prototype with only 1,000 to 2,000 ever made. So why did I ramble on for 5 minutes? Well, 1, the folks here don't mind when I talk about my passion for weird guns, and 2, so you have a feeling of how this rifle sounded to the average gun control supporter. A full-auto future gun that leaves no evidence behind, has a scary black polymer construction, a 50-round magazine, advanced targeting optics, armor-piercing rounds, and an underslung grenade launcher. That sounds like something no one should have on the streets of Edmonton. Well, I got good news for you. You can rest easy. No one can walk around Jasper Ave open carrying a Teutonic future gun, thanks to Bill's C68 and C17. Bill's C68 and C17 were a huge change in Canadian gun control. They established the very unpopular Canadian long gun registration, a program that tried to register every long gun, think shotguns and hunting rifles, in Canada. By 1995, that would have been roughly 7 million guns that needed to be cataloged by the feds. The program was shut down in 2012, partially due to long gun owners refusing to register and a gun-friendly conservative government. Another much talked about part of C17 was the banning of specific guns and their variants by name alone. Heavy hitters such as the AK-47, the FN-FAL, the Steyr AUG, the FAMAS, basically every major nation's battle rifle was banned, except for the AR-15. That was put into a restricted category thanks to the lobbying of target shooters across the nation. But besides those standard military rifles come some really weird oddball bans. Most firearms in this part of the list are so rare that you'd be hard-pressed to find one in working order, let alone want to shoot one. For example, there was only 36 Pausa P50 rifles ever made. The Ma-D Griffin was a glorified parts kit that shot 50 BMG out of a handgun-style configuration at a whopping 2 rounds per minute. The inventor would be arrested in 2000 for charges relating to the handgun itself. There were only 125 Rye 500s ever made. They are a single-shot anti-material rifle that seems to only have been used by the IRA after they were used up by the US Navy. It was rumored that they were a testing platform for experimental long-range rounds. And then there is the bureaucratic gem that is the G11, a gun that ran on magic German pixie dust hard-pressed into caseless rounds. A gun that was only ever a prototype, that had ammo so rare it would be nearly impossible to get a full magazine's worth, was banned by Canada because it was seen as a threat to the general populace. Did anyone over at the federal government do their research? Well, they tried to, and that's where the controversy starts. The initial work for the Order in Council was started by the only Prime Minister to ever have a nude photo shoot, Kim Campbell and her Conservative Party. When she lost the election, the remaining work was done by the Liberals' Justice Minister at the time, Alan Rock. To say Canadian shooters were none too happy was an understatement.
The Canadian Firearms Digest, the propaganda wing of the National Firearms Association,
and Canadian Gun Nuts, a legacy BBS forums, are both excellent cross-sections of the mood at the time. Rumors and speculation abound. The Liberals used the American 1994 assault weapons ban as a base. Guns of the same function were treated differently based on how scary they looked. And the one rumor that gets trumpeted out the most, they used a copy of Gun Digest magazine and found all the scary guns to ban by name. So what do we say about these three rumors? Well, yeah, of course, all of those are correct. Why 2 of the 3 shows incompetence on the part of the government is beyond what we can fathom. Of course they used the American gun ban as a base. It was the most successful example of North American gun control at the time. And of course they flipped through gun magazines and consulted firearms encyclopedias. The study of firearms is so broad that not one person can know everything about it. For the record, we couldn't find the specific single gun digest that people were referring to. Here are a few candidates that we found though. Not one pro-gun commentator we read used the same date of the specific magazine, or could show proof of it.
We found an old email server backup of David Tomlinson's, the former president of the NFA, after following a rabbit hole on Canadian Gun Nuts. The closest we came to the origin of this controversy is from a 1996 exchange about American firearms magazines.
But it did come with its real problems. The second point, guns of a similar or same function are not treated equally, was a true problem. For example, the Russian SKS isn't banned or restricted, but the American M14 is. The Chinese clone of the M14 isn't banned, but both of their magazines are pinned to 5 rounds by law.
If you want to shoot more than 5 rounds, you have to go buy an M1 Garand, which has a similar function but uses 8-round N-block clips.
4 similar guns, all treated completely differently. This is a supposed list from 1992 that shows how the RCMP classify guns. If a gun accumulates 50 points, they do a second evaluation to make it prohibited versus restricted. This is just a rumored list, so please, do not take this exercise seriously. That being said, let's put some guns into this calculator and see if their classification makes sense. The action type is full auto, 100 points. Okay, it's already banned, not looking good, but the list works. Let's say it's semi-auto for now, so that's only 25 points, and we'll continue on. Ammunition type is center fire, so 15 plus 25 is 40. It seems to be good on the characteristics, but it has a bayonet lug, a flash hider, and a faux carry handle. It's really just optics. So that gets us to 65. The magazine holds 50 rounds, so add 35 to that. The G11 is cooked. It's banned for sure. But you see what I mean, it's not all aesthetics. Some of it is, the bayonet lug, the flash hider, and the carry handle are all aesthetics, but not all of it is. So let's try the M1 Garand. It's a rifle that still exists in the non-restricted category, which means you don't need to register its ownership with the government. Its action type is semi-auto, 25 points. It's a center fire, that makes it 40 points. It has a bayonet lug, 45 points. It has a flash suppressor, 50 points. The round count is between 5 and 10, so let's take the difference and round down. That's 22 points, added to 50 to make it 72.
That's over 50. The Garand should be at least restricted, but as we saw before, the rifle was evaluated and had an exception put into law for its non-restricted status. So now, if you want to go around the government's magazine regulations, you just have to find a surplus shop. You can see why people were frustrated. Why was the Garand not banned or restricted? Was it because we respect history? Was it because it didn't look as scary as the M14? This all seemed like a poor tax rather than a sensible gun regulation. As long as you had enough money for a Garand, you could get around it.
This gun is just as dangerous as a semi-automatic G11, and the G11 was banned. C68 and C17 would go down in history as a step in the wrong direction to most gun owners.
It was seen differently by the Ecole Polytechnique survivors.
In 1989, Marc Lepin entered Montreal's Ecole Polytechnique with a Ruger Mini 14. By the time he was done, 28 women in total, 14 wounded and 14 killed, would be remembered forever as victims of gender-based gun violence. Marc was fighting feminism, in his own words, doing the stuff that incels are into nowadays. This, more than anything else, was the impetus for C68 and C17's passing. The Conservatives had to do something to try to save face for the election, and the Liberals always had tight restrictions on their docket, so this just made their job easier. With the support from every political party, bills were rushed out in little time to do really in-depth research. The intention was in the right place. The execution was lacking.
We kinda get their point with these exotic bans. Let's say the G11 did get pushed into mass production. What if the Pausa P50 made a resurgence? What if the Maudie Griffin didn't break your wrist? Are we really missing out on that much? Isn't 454 Casul enough of a wrist breaker? Ammo aside, legal firearms give the same experience as banned ones, and these rare outliers are easy picking for hungry gun control sharks. Very few owners, if any, have these firearms, so no one can complain when they're banned. If they do go into production, the ban stands. Pretty easy. The whole strategy is to whittle owners down piece by piece where they can. This isn't a rant, it's just an observation. Another observation, what is sillier? Banning a gun that was only ever a prototype, or complaining about a gun ban on a firearm you will never own because it was only ever a prototype.
The G11 remains on the banned list of firearms in Canada. It's not cited as often in anti-gun rhetoric as it used to, but that's probably because they have more stricter things to fight today. The survivors of Ecole Polytechnique and gun violence in general are constantly fighting for stricter gun control in Canada. The 2020 Nova Scotia shooting made enough of an impact to push their anti-gun message back to the forefront. Legislation has been passed making another huge rewrite to Canadian gun laws, including a buyback and a freeze on handguns. As of the time of this video, nothing has been officially released for the timeline of the buyback. Once again, owners are refusing to budge and the government isn't confiscating. For the time being, until humanity starts fighting in space, you won't be able to buy a German Magic Future space gun in Canada. Thanks for watching.